Good afternoon and welcome to the RO Sports Show's newest show we're calling the Ross Rebound, which is going to be our new weekly college basketball show. I am your host, Matt Harrelson, alongside with me, Russell Parker and Dion Cranford. So, guys, let's jump right into it. First of all, talking about that big victory the UNC Tar Heels picked up this past weekend over the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Now, Gonzaga came in at number 4 in the nation, and I'm going to be honest with you guys. I thought this one would go the other way. Instead, UNC ended up winning 103-90.
Double digits.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think after Gonzaga lost to Tennessee, it may have kind of boosted UNC's confidence a little bit. Of course, they probably didn't need it anyway. They haven't been playing too badly. I think the biggest thing that UNC is doing well right now is the rebounding. They're at 45.2% rebounds per game, which is 4th in the country. So if they can keep the rebounds high, they've got a good chance of beating anybody, especially the way they're shooting. And I think Johnson had 16 rebounds in that game, about 25 points.
Just to spout off some of the Tar Heels numbers here. Luke May had 20 points and 16 rebounds. Cam had 25 points, Kobe White had 15, and 7th Woods had 14. So 3 guards there scoring in double digits. Russell, what was your takeaway from this ball game?
Yeah, I actually caught this there at the end, and I actually stopped the TV channel there for a minute to watch that game. And, of course, UNC is not my team, but I had to watch anyway because it's 2 big teams, obviously. But, yeah, I thought Cameron Johnson had a really great performance that night. 25 points. I think he made 6 out of 8 of the 3-pointers. So a really good game for him. And somebody else who made 20 points as well. I can't remember off the top of my head. But 2 big guys on UNC's team.
That's probably May that you're talking about.
Yeah.
The forwards. So talking about the Tar Heels real quick. They were coming in, I believe, at number 12 is what they were. Of course, I think they've moved up since then after that victory. Anyway, the Tar Heels have 2 losses this year. One is against number 7 Michigan, 84-67. The other was to Texas, 92-89. That one was close to Michigan, not so much. But Michigan, that's not really a bad loss, right? Michigan's number 5 in the nation right now.
And at home.
Yeah.
And Michigan's good. I think the biggest thing between those 2 games and the Gonzaga game was the finish. Carolina just couldn't finish in those games. They stayed with them for a while and then just let them pull away and just didn't finish strong. Whereas in the Gonzaga game, Gonzaga shot 56% in the second half, yet they never got to less than 8 points within of Carolina scoring the entire second half. So Carolina finished that game even though Gonzaga made that strong surge there. So.
And it also seemed like against Michigan and Texas, those 2 losses, we weren't able to stop anybody either. Carolina's always known to be able to run the ball up and down the court and wear you out and score 100 points like they did against Gonzaga, which, again, that surprised me a little bit. But to only score 67 points, I know Michigan's good, but that's just like uncanny for the Tar Heels' high-powered offense, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. You expect, at least for me, I would expect at least 80 points out of them every game.
And then real quick on the other side of the coin, Rui Hachimura, who is Gonzaga's best player, their forward, had 17 points. Brandon Clark, 15 points. Josh Perkins, their do-it-all guard, had 20 points. And Zach Norvell Jr., their other guard, had 21 points. Let's talk about Gonzaga for a minute because – Russell, it's probably before your time, but I know, Dion, you can remember when Gonzaga first came on the scene. What was it, late 90s, something like that? Mm-hmm. And got into the tournament, did well, and then it just seems like ever since then they've just been this blue blood almost of college basketball.
Yeah, well, it's funny because Gonzaga was one of those teams you never heard of until the tournament. They always seem to make it in, but, hey, there's that team again. And now they're proving they belong there year in and year out, and it's great for them to be able to make that appearance worth something because for many years they were just there because they didn't play anyone.
Yeah.
And for someone who just watches college football mostly, never seen their name in that scene, but when you see their name, you always think basketball. So, they definitely got a great program there.
And we're going to talk about the discrepancies between college football and basketball here in just a minute. But just to touch on it real quick, Gonzaga is one of those schools where in college football, they'd have no shot at winning anything, would they?
Do they have a football team?
Exactly. Exactly. But again, we'll get into that here momentarily. So let's take a look at the top 10 right now. I'm just going to run through these real quick. Number 1 is Kansas. Number 2, the Duke Blue Devils. Number 3, the Tennessee Volunteers, all the way up to 3 now. Michigan coming in at number 4. Virginia, number 5. So you now have 2 teams from the ACC in the top 5. Nevada, the Wolfpack, coming in at number 6. Auburn, another team you don't usually see in the top 10 in basketball, coming in at number 7. Gonzaga fell back to 8. UNC moved up to 9, actually behind Gonzaga, even though they beat them. And then Michigan State rounding out the top 10. So any surprises there?
Definitely Auburn for me.
Yeah, coming in at number 7.
I never really expected them to really be that good in basketball.
Yeah, that's a football school. So
Yeah.
what are they doing?
Bruce Pearl, though, is a good basketball coach. We've seen it at other schools, Tennessee being one of those. So I think that's kind of the difference maker in Auburn. But any surprises from you?
I'm not surprised that they're ranked, but Nevada seems a little high to me. And I'm more surprised that Kentucky lost as far as they did, fell as far as they did, because they're way down, I think, like 19. I don't know if they're a top 10 team, but I think they fell a little bit further than they may have deserved. But yeah, Nevada's probably a little bit high for me because I just don't really feel like they play.
Yeah, they. I want to say Nevada's in the Mountain West, perhaps.
So,
but again, Power 5, Group of 5, this doesn't make as big a difference in college basketball. One, because you play more games. Nevada's one of those teams, though, and we see it every year, that's a mid-major, so to speak, that's very senior-heavy. Mm-hmm. And we, especially in college basketball, we see this all the time. And this would be a team that potentially could make a run in March Madness because of all that depth, because of all the upperclassmen that they have that have experience. I think that could be a big difference maker.
well, that's the issue with the voting and in all the polls. You're kind of guessing as to the strength of the schedule until we get several weeks in, and especially in the conference play. I even put in my notes, Nevada's only notable win was a 72-66 victory over Arizona State. So, and then the rest of their schedule is just kind of really flat. So even though they're undefeated, I just don't really know what to expect from them.
True, and I see you got the name Caleb Martin on there, and I was trying to remember his name, averaging almost 19 points a game. He's going to be playing in the NBA, though. That's just the kind of talent that they've been able to bring in to Nevada's program. So, Russell, let me ask you this. Does this surprise you at all that UNC is still ranked behind Gonzaga even though the Tar Heels beat them?
I don't really think so because even though this game was only split by about 13 points, it wasn't. I don't think that's a big difference there. I think Gonzaga is still probably a better team overall, and as far as who they played, probably pays into a big factor in this over who UNC has played. And of course, I'm sure that Michigan game is probably stinging them a little bit too.
And then let's also mention Duke here, another North Carolina school in the ACC. So talking about Duke, they're number 2 right now, and obviously all the talk is usually around Zion Williamson. I don't even know how to describe this guy, LeBron-esque. I mean, he's got the body of LeBron. That's not necessarily the finesse or touch around the basket, but the guy could dunk it from the bleachers if he wants to. Duke, though, very young, even though they have the top 3 high school kids on their team, we've seen that having a bunch of one-and-dones doesn't necessarily get you a championship, does it?
No, I mean, I think when Duke came into the season, they were just expected to steamroll everybody, make it to the championship and win that too. And that loss kind of made them kind of rethink things a little bit. And again, it was a close loss to Gonzaga. And I honestly, when we were talking about the top 10 and you're looking at Kansas and Duke, I kind of felt like everybody looked at that Kentucky victory. I mean, it was like 34 points. Duke just blew them out. And then they leapfrogged Duke over Kansas, even though Kansas didn't really get a loss. And then finally Kansas is back up top now. But now that Kentucky's lost to Seton Hall and Kentucky's struggling against some weaker opponents and they're falling down the standings, I think that's kind of hurting Duke in terms of the relevance of their games.
It doesn't help them because obviously that loss gets worse and worse. The Kentucky's record gets worse. But Kentucky's is just another example, in my opinion. Coach Calipari's been bringing in one-and-done guys now. I mean, he almost started that whole revolution, if you will. Now Kentucky's won at least one national championship, that squad that had Anthony Davis on it. But other than that, one and done again does not certify you a national championship.
Well, I think the difference between Duke and Kentucky this year is you look at Duke and their roster's really deep. I mean, they've got guys playing 10, 12, 15, they've got 9 or 10 guys playing 10 or more minutes. So, and so if you can do that and you can keep inserting those players, you're not so relying so much on Williamson to really carry you. But I made a note that Barrett, Williamson, and Reddish account for nearly 60 points per game, just the 3 of them.
Yeah.
So as long as they've got that depth in their roster, should God forbid ankle injury or something come up, I think they're still okay.
What do you think the ceiling for the Blue Devils is this year?
I think they'll definitely make it to. Usually they'll make it to the championship tournament, but I think they could even walk away with an ACC title. and maybe even to at least Elite Eight.
Yeah, I mean, again, Duke's always a team that's going to be there as long as Coach K's there, and probably after that, just because of the program that he's built. Duke's always going to be good. I agree with you. Obviously, I think they've got a chance to win the ACC just like they do every other year, make it to the tournament. And I mean, again, as long as Coach K's there, Duke is always a threat to win a national championship.
Yes, they are.
So, all right, let's move forward. So let's talk about kind of this discrepancy we see between college basketball and college football. So just throwing a couple of teams out there and their current ranks. The University of Buffalo is ranked 14th. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think they're undefeated. Marquette is ranked number 20th. Houston 21st, and Furman 24th. Furman's in South Carolina, right?
Yep. Go Paladins.
Yeah. So a couple of names, especially Furman, that you just don't ever see ranked in college basketball. But how much easier is it to win a championship in basketball than it is football?
Well, there's 64 teams in a tournament versus 4 in the playoffs of college football. There's a bigger chance of you winning it all the way in basketball. Granted, it's a longer process, but you got that chance at least.
Well, I mean, we're having this discussion after a year where 64 finally beat a 1, so that kind of proves that if you get in, you kind of have a chance. But see, I kind of disagree, because think of how hard it is just to get to the Final Four in basketball, whereas to get in the Final Four in football, you just have to be, you just have to win your games and be, have a good schedule. I'm not saying it's easier to win those games, but you're locked in by just winning certain games on your schedule and finishing maybe undefeated or with one loss. You're kind of in the Final Four. Whereas with basketball, you could be completely undefeated in the regular season and then bow out in the first or second round.
Yeah, I was kind of talking, though, in terms of in football, you pretty much have to go undefeated or lose maybe one game.
And it's got to be a quality loss.
Yeah, because if you lose 2 games in college football, you're done. Now, obviously, there's a little more room for error in basketball, again, because you play many more games. But I think, like, with teams like this, like Furman, will they win a national championship? No, probably not. But they have a better shot at winning a national championship in basketball than they ever would, and even being in the discussion for the college football playoff.
Well, that's true. But, I mean, if you just view the college football regular season as the basketball playoffs, you can see you can't lose. So you just have to keep winning. But, I get your point. But at the same time, you're probably going to less likely have a Furman knock out an Alabama in the regular season than you would a Furman, say, knock out a really good team in basketball in the early rounds of the 64 playoff.
Even if you do go undefeated in college football, you still don't always get in. Look at UCF; they're undefeated. They won their conference championship, but they're not in when they got 2 one-loss teams ahead of them. Granted, they got quality losses, but if UCF and Alabama, all these guys in the college basketball world, they undefeated, they're definitely going to be in because there's more spots for them to be available in.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, we just see how much UCF has fought and clawed to get to where they are, and that still wasn't good enough. Whereas in basketball, Gonzaga can win a national championship. These smaller schools get a shot, and as we saw, UMBC beat a number 1 team in Virginia. So I just think there's a better chance at getting to it, rather.
Well, the other thing about college football is you can still win something. If you don't get into the national championship playoffs, you can still win a bowl game.
Right.
And there's a lot of teams that probably should never get into any kind of postseason, getting into these bowl games with the opportunity to win. I mean, let's face it, it's a participation award. But I mean, I'm not trying to be mean, but I've always been against the bowl games. I still think they should expand the playoffs. I don't know why they don't, but again, at least if you are in football, you have the opportunity to take home something, whereas in basketball, could be one and done.
I don't know if I'd be too excited about winning the Dollar General Bowl, though.
Well, we talked about that online, but
yeah.
even somebody came back online. I forgot who it was, but somebody actually came back when I mentioned something about the Dollar General Bowl. One team is just a few miles away from where it's being played. The other one, which I think is Buffalo, is in their 3rd bowl game ever.
Yeah.
So it is a big deal to them.
It is.
So, at the same
time. But let me throw another scenario out there. What's something we talked about at the College Football Bowl Bash? You're seeing draft picks that are potentially going high sitting out their bowl games because in their minds it's more important to stay healthy than it is to play in that bowl game. I don't foresee that happening in basketball anytime soon, where a top draft pick will say, well, I'm going to sit out the March Madness tournament because you have a shot at a championship.
And a lot of that also has to do with national recognition. If you're playing in Dollar General Bowl, you're not getting that much exposure out there. Nobody's going to be watching that. If you're playing in tournament, first round, you're number 64 and you lose, you still got a big national exposure because that big fan base and those big names out there are all watching that game.
But to your point, to that statement though, the fact that these guys are choosing to just not play in them at all shows that something needs to be done. I mean, it shows that there's no relevance to those games. Why are they playing them?
Yeah. All right. So let's move on. And, of course, we're going to have that discussion again, I'm sure, as we see more and more smaller teams do better in the March Madness tournament. But let's talk about two of the Blue Bloods, and that's going to be today's matchup at 5:15 between number 19 Kentucky and newly minted number 9 UNC. So these two teams have a pretty good rivalry going. I feel like we play each other every year for as long as I can remember. So let's just jump right into it. Who you guys got?
I'm going to go with Kentucky on this one.
Okay.
I'm not just saying that because I love the SEC, but Kentucky, I mean, those two teams in general are very, very close together, equally matched. It can go either way, I think. But I think Kentucky's going to get the win on this one. I mean, the last 5 games, Kentucky has gotten 4-1. UNC is 3-2 in that, and I mean, UK has been so well done. I mean, their only losses in overtime by 1 point. So I think as far as the momentum, I think Kentucky still has that. Granted, UNC has a big win coming off of it.
Their only loss besides that butt whooping to Duke.
Yeah.
All right, here you got. Yeah.
Well, again, that loss to Duke was a long time ago. I mean, that was very early in the season, so they're playing much better. I'm still going to go with Carolina in this one just because how they looked. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. This is in a neutral place?
I believe it is. I was just getting
think they're playing at Madison Square?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay. So, that'll kind of take, probably the fans out of it a little bit.
Well, Tar Heel fans travel, though.
Well, they travel, but they're going to get swallowed up by Madison Square.
That's true.
No, I'm going to go with UNC on this one just because I think they are playing better. I mean, it was just like everything they threw in the air went in the net against Gonzaga. Some of those shots, I don't even know how they made them. But they're like I said, as long as they rebound well, do well at the free throw line, I think they're going to be fine because they're shooting well enough. All they got to do is keep those two statistics high, and I think they'll win.
I'm going to take the Tar Heels as well. 4 guys I'm reading here for the Tar Heels averaging double digits in scoring. Cam Johnson with 16 points a game, Kobe White with 15, Luke May with 14, and highly touted freshman Nasir Little averaging almost 12 points a game. So and then May also averaging 10 rebounds. So he's actually averaging a double-double. So.
And I'll just throw this in there, but Brooks is at like 9.8.
Yeah, he's
so
right there.
He's right there at 10.
And that's what it's going to come down to, and something that I feel like Roy gets a feel for his team right about now as they go into ACC play, and they decide, are we going to be a team that runs you to death, or are we going to be a team that sets up in the post and rebounds and gets offensive rebounds and scores? Which way do you think we're leaning right now? Or can it be both?
I mean, I think it can be a little bit both. I think rebounds, especially offensive rebounds. I mean, the more second chance points the Tar Heels can kind of start accumulating as they go along the season, I think the better chances they're going to have in this game as well as through the ACC. Their shooting percentage is not bad, but it's not great. So they're going to need a lot of those second chance points. And as long as they can keep that rebound percentage high, I think they'll be fine.
Tar Heels ranked first in the nation in rebounds with 46.1 per game. So Kentucky sits at 41st overall with just under 40 rebounds per game. So that could be one of the difference makers. Hopefully, that'll see the Tar Heels get a victory. So,
you're welcome.
Are we going to keep track of these like we did with football?
I think we will.
All right, so I guess we'll have to start up standings for this one and see who can win this trophy after the season's over. All right, so we got our picks for that game. So just like we did with the college football season, let's take our locked ins and our upset alerts. So who you got for locked in?
For a locked in, I've got Florida State over St. Louis. I think Florida State's got that one in the bag easily. And my upset is going to be UCLA over Ohio State.
All right, you got one picked?
I didn't pick this week. So.
All right, that's cool. We'll get back. Actually, just make sure you get them to us so you don't cheat.
Okay.
My locked in. I've got number 16 Wisconsin over Grambling. Wisconsin's just obviously the better of their two teams. I think this is what you would call a cupcake matchup, so to speak. Ethan Happ, dynamic forward for Wisconsin. I feel like he's been there for 15 years. But I think he'll be the big scorer for them. And then my upset alert, I've got the ACCs and Tobacco Roads only Wake Forest over number 3 Tennessee.
Ooh.
Danny Manning, Wake Forest's head coach, came in with a lot of hoopla, having the history that he has in basketball. It's been a little bit of a letdown. I know they just sent John Collins, big recruit, to the NBA. I think he's with the Hawks now. Other than that, a lot of his guys haven't really panned out. So Danny's kind of on the hot seat a little bit. So hopefully they can get a win and springboard off of that.
I'm hoping Tennessee loses too.
I bet you are. I bet you are. All right, guys. Anything else you want to add before we head off?
Can I say Roll Tide in this one?
No.
Did we talk about Roy?
Oh, yeah. Goodness gracious. Yes. Let's talk about Roy. How can I forget that? So, Roy Williams, I'm glad you reminded me. Roy Williams received a 8-year contract extension this past Wednesday that will pay him through the 2027-2028 season. So, just want to throw this out there. He's 68 years old right now. When this thing ends, he'll be 78. What's the point of this?
He loves UNC basketball.
Yeah.
That, and if you can do it, because why stop? I mean, it's not like it's and don't. I guess I shouldn't say it's not a job, because it is a job. He works hard, but he loves his job, and it's fun. And why would you want to quit? I would do it as long as I could walk.
No, I agree with that. I just assume that guys like him, Krzyzewski, they just have lifetime contracts, and they just coach until they say, "All right, I'm ready to hang it up." You know what I mean? I just feel like. I think Michigan's coach, Beeline, they just gave him the same type of lifetime contract, if you will, where once the extension ends, it just automatically rolls over for another 2 years, and I think that's a good way to do it if you've got a guy at the helm that's in it for the long haul like a Roy Williams,
Well, I mean, one thing that's going to play into this a little bit is Roy's health.
True.
He has a lot of vertigo problems. He has a lot of – so, I mean, I don't know how bad his health is overall, but I'm sure there's some sort of, stipulation into that contract should he need to bow out for health reasons he can. But, I mean, other than that, I say let him coach until he decides he's done. So.
All right, what's your opinion on this?
Yeah, I think Roy, having him back is going to be great. And I know I give a lot of flack to UNC, but Roy Williams, I love watching him coach. I think he's got a lot of passion when he goes out and play. 3 titles and 8 ACC titles underneath his belt. I mean, the guy's awesome. I got to say that.
Yeah, he's definitely one of the best of all time, and we're glad to have him. One last thing. I know I've done a matter of opinion about who will eventually take over for Roy. And looking at these numbers, he'll be 78 when this thing concludes. Personally, I don't think he makes it anywhere close to that. Do you think that part of this next contract extension will have him maybe naming a successor in it? And if so, who do you think that might be? Want to speculate? I speculated a few names. I'll throw some of them out there, but I'm just curious who you think might eventually take over the helm.
I don't know, because it's considering the tradition of that job, it's almost got to be a former Tar Heel.
Yeah.
I know it doesn't have to be, but there's just so much tradition in doing that. So, gosh, I don't even know who would.
I know somebody who could really upset both UNC and Duke fans. Coach K.
Yeah, there's no way he would. That's not even. We all have a chance at winning the lottery better than Coach K leaving Duke to go to Carolina. I don't even think that's feasible.
Yeah,
some names that I threw out there. One was Billy Donovan, who's with the Thunder now. Of course, coached Florida to a couple of national championships. Now he's not from Carolina, so Shaka Smart, another name outside of the Carolina tree, so to speak. But then there's also still some guys. What's his name? Kenny Smith was a name that got floated out there. What's his name? Hubert Davis, who I think is already on Williams' bench. There's a couple other guys. Sean May is a name that's sitting out there. So a couple of former Tar Heels that could potentially take over. Jerry Stackhouse. There's some names out there.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that, and you're right with the 8-year extension. Maybe they start looking for their coach now, bring him, put him next to Roy for the next few years,
staff,
and then
groom him.
It's a great idea. So.
Unless he's already there. Again, he may already be on the bench. We don't know, that's some decisions that Roy and his family and Bubba Cunningham and the boosters will have to make, I suppose. So, all right, guys, that is going to do it for the inaugural edition of the Ross Rebound, your weekly college basketball show. So once again, hopefully everybody will continue to tune into this as we follow the college basketball season up to and through March Madness, and hopefully a Tar Heel championship come April. So anyway, once again, Russell Parker, Dion Cranford, I am Matt Harrelson. We'll see you right back here next Saturday for more Ross Rebound.